Okay, we're going to now fit the sleeve into the armhole, turn your bodice inside out, and for me it's going to help to have it this way, lined on. So I've got the neck side this side and the sleeve side this side. Turn your sleeve the right way out and have it at this sort of configuration. And where you marked your halfway point for your sleeve, we're going to push that inside and line that mark up with the top of your sleeve. Just put that in temporarily, close to the middle. Okay, so then you're going to pull the sleeve through and then line your bottom seam up with the side seam of your bodice. Make sure that your seams are flat and that they line up, and then just put a pin in there just to hold it. It will go. Okay, like so. Now we can work on the gathering stitch. About halfway around from the top shoulder seam to the side seam, I've put a mark for my halfway mark between the two, and then I'll line that up with my halfway mark that I put onto my sleeve. So now I'm going to pin those together. Then I'm going to go to the other side, just turn that all over, and there's my halfway mark on the bodice, and pulling the sleeve in from the outside, there's my halfway mark for the sleeve. So I'm going to line those up and then put a pin back in. So now I have my secure points. Right, we're now going to get our gathering thread from the top, and I'm going to put in this side first. So put some gathers into your sleeve to start you off. Now right at the bottom of your sleeve, at the side of the bodice, the first part is actually flat, so we can put one pin to start, just there. And where you've got your halfway point with your pin and your halfway point with this pin, we're going to match them up. Then I'd like the gathers to pull tight enough so it fits into this, so we need a bit more gathering. To where your marks are. Okay, I think that's about a decent enough fit. Make sure that any seams are spread out. And now we can put in our first pin to hold that in place. Just put a pin in a little bit further down. So that's the first half done. Now we're going to work on the top of the gather. So find my gathering thread again, which is difficult because everything is white. So now I'm going to put more gathers in, and I want it to fit between that pin and the shoulder. So I can let a little bit of that go. Spread your gathers out a bit to fit. I can actually pull it a little bit taut so I can see what I'm doing. A few more gathers, and I think it's about there. So put a pin in there to hold it in place. And one a little bit further down. Okay, I'm happy with all the gathers that have gone into there. And now I just want to put a pin in so, and I don't want the gather to come undone. So I'm going to do a figure of 8 around that pin, in, out, in, out, in, out, like so, a few times. This will stop your gathering stitch coming out while you go on to the next stage. So I'm going to just go into the material again with a pin, and that should hold that gathering stitch now. So when I come to take the sleeve out, it won't move. Okay, starting on the other side now, the first 2 inches or so, about 5 centimetres, are flat. So I'm just going to put a pin in there to hold it flat, and then I've gathered up the side again. I'm going to line up the halfway mark on the bodice, just there, with my mark that I've got on my sleeve, and they should fit in together by the time I've put my gathers in. That works about there. Just put a pin in there to hold this. Now I'm going to continue gathering. Straight thread there. And then fit the last bit into the top part by moving the gathers around. You can see what works and what doesn't. I think that's about enough gathering to go into that sleeve. So I'm going to go about halfway, just pin that down so it doesn't move. Pin that to the edge of the sleeve. Probably gathering, as you keep losing the gathering stitch. It's a bit awkward to show it. There we go. And that should be enough. Now where's my gathering stitch gone? I don't want to lose my gathering stitch when I actually take my sleeve out. There it is. So like the other side, I'm just going to put a pin in. There's my gathering stitch. And I'm going to do a figure of 8 around that pin so it doesn't move. And then just put the pin into the material again just to hold it. And that is your sleeve in place. Right, now that I'm happy with the fit of the sleeve, I'm going to make the gathering stitch a bit more permanent so that it doesn't come out. So I've threaded the gathering stitch onto a needle. That's the one that the thread is all tied about. I can take that out now, and then I can just do a few whipping stitches just through the sleeve, not through the bodice, otherwise you'll sew them all together just for a few stitches just to hold that stitch so it doesn't come off. Okay, now that I've secured that, I'm just going to cut that thread off. And then on the next pin, find out where my gathering thread is. I'm going to just thread that onto a needle. Okay, now that I've threaded that up, I can now take that pin out. exactly the same, just do a few stitches just into the sleeve itself to hold that gathering stitch so it doesn't come undone. Now that we've got that in place, we can now take all the pins out and take the sleeve out of the armhole. Is that everything? That's one there. Okay, bodice to one side. Yeah, we forgot to say at the beginning. The next stage will be to find out how much gathering we're going to need along the bottom. So we're going to do a rough gathering first, have an approximation, and then we'll be trying it onto the arm to see how it fits.
Okay, now I've taken the sleeve out. I've run a temporary hand stitch here in red thread. It will be taken out later. It's just so we can put the sleeve back into the armhole properly and then pull the gathering across the bottom to make it fit.
Okay, now we've just temporarily put the sleeve into the armhole. We're just a bit tacking, and we're experimenting now with how tight the gather should be on this part here, and we're using a temporary sleeve as well just to see what it's going to look like and whether it's not going to be too tight around the arms. There you go.
Okay, so you see here I've got all these pieces cut out. They're called panes, but I'll call them strips to make it easier for you. They will go over the sleeve itself. And got my ruler then. I've made them all 8 centimetres wide. This includes a 1.5 seam allowance on each side, so you will lose 1.5 centimetres each side. I've cut them like this because it really doesn't matter. You can carry on slanting it down or slanting it up that way if you wish. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. You'll probably end up cutting it off anyway when you turn it the right way out. So basically I created these using the sleeve pattern. That's the sleeve as it is gathered on top and bottom edges when it came out the armhole. Sort of did my best. I did do this originally with narrow strips. It was a bit hit and miss, so these are now done properly and ready to go. They've been made to the width of the sleeve because they're going to go under a little bit to create a bit of a shape on the sleeve, so it's like instead of a straight sleeve like that on your arm, it'll go a little bit like that, so it'll be slanted upwards on the bottom hem. That's the idea anyway. So I've got 6 of these, all 8 centimetres wide, at varying sort of lengths. This one's probably, it's 22 long. Obviously getting shorter towards the underarm and the sleeve, and you don't have these go right under the arm because it would be uncomfortable and too much bulk under your armpits. So these are now ready to go and cut out my pieces. Okay, so this is just a trial run of putting the sleeve in to see what it looks like and some practice panes or strips. and we gathered the bottom, and I've put it on just to see how it's settling, and it's looking a little bit better now. I've extended the width of these, so that's all good to go at the moment. And we'll just show you now how we do the strips of fabric. I'm now cutting out my panes. Now, as you know, this fabric had a shiny side and a rougher side. I was going for the matte rougher side for my panes or strips, whatever you want to call them. Panes is more historical term. So you have to remember that when you sew the two together, because you need two to each, that you'll want to sew good side, because you're basically lining each strip. So here I've cut out one in, I'm doing the centre left. So I've cut out one the same way as that way with the shiny side up. And now, because now I'm doing one with the matte side, so that when I place this on top, you've got matte side to matte side, so good side to good side, and then you will sew down on the shiny side out. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Otherwise you end up with the shiny side out. If you've got fabric that is the same both sides and it doesn't matter, then do not worry about this part. But I'm doing these one at a time because it's satin and it slips and it slides, and trying to do two at the same time, even on the fold, was driving me nuts. So this is the only reason I'm doing these one at a time. It's taking twice as long, but it has to be done. So yeah, so you cut out one with shiny side up, one with matte side up, and then put the matte to matte. And you'll do that for all of your sections. And then of course you need another pair for the other sleeve, so you're making an outer liner times 2 for each one. Okay, so for each section now, that's each piece that goes on the sleeve. So I've done 2 of each one for 2 sleeves. I've sewn down my seam, so it's a 1.5 seam allowance down each side on both of them. And so I don't get lost, I've labelled them from left to right on the sleeve. So you've got L3 from the back left, which goes near the underarm, and then L2, and then L1, which is the centre, and then it'll be R for right, R1, R2, R3. That's just so I don't get lost where each one is. So I'm trying to keep all those pieces together and pin them in place so I don't get lost as to which section goes where. So that's what we've done so far. In a minute we're going to cut down the seam allowance a bit before we turn them the right way out. And as I said earlier, remember, if it's got a good side and bad side, if you want your good side to show, make sure you've got the good side to good side. So here you can see I've got my bad side showing out, which is the shiny side. That's the side I don't want to be seen on the outside. Okay, so we're just going to trim that seam allowance now down in half a little bit, so it's not quite so excessive. And you're going to do that on every single strip, both sides. Okay, the next thing to do is to turn your strips inside out. So now they'll be the right way out. So, and do that for all of them. Okay, next we're now turning them the right way out. We're going to give them a press with the iron. Let's go from the side, sorry. That's better. I'm just pressing those seams flat so that they all look nice like this. And do that for all of them. Okay, so there's been a slight change in plan what I was going to do with these strips. I was going to have them all lined up straight, similar to if you've seen the recent live action Snow White film kind of thing, a Tudor thing. But then I thought of a different idea that would make them look a bit prettier rather than just strips. That is, I'm going to gather them all into the middle and make like little bows, and then I will get some of this trim that will go over the top. These will get sewn into the sleeve, and then afterwards I'll put some of that chain on like I did on the bodice and the skirt swags if you saw those tutorials. So that's the idea. So first of all I'm just going to pinch these and gather them in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just fold one of the strips in half, sort of mark with my thumb there a halfway point, just doing this by eye, and I'm just going to pinch a bit there, pinch a bit from the other side, make like a little bow. Just check that it looks about halfway between the top and the bottom. Take your needle and thread and then just go straight the way through. And straight back. Just like doing a bow. Now do that a few times and then just secure the end off and do a few over stitches, and then do this for all the others. Okay, so that's all my little bows done and tied off, like so, ready to go on to the next part. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is something a little bit different with this trim. As you can see, the trim comes with these box pleats just sewn on the edge there, and the rest is loose. And I didn't think that looked right, just having one edge stick up on these bows. So what I did is, under the machine, is I've run a sewing line all the way down the middle of a strip, and then slowly unpicked the edges just so it makes the edges stand up, and I think that looks a little bit more uniform rather than just having one edge just standing up like that, which looks a bit odd. So now that'll hold it in the middle, and then the edges will just, both edges will stick up a little bit then, and that looks just a little better than that. So what I'm going to be doing is taking a good length of trim. I will get some brief measurements first of each one, so roughly know how much I've got to do. Sew down the middle and then begin picking all the stitches down the side. So I might be a little while. Okay, so I've now sewn on those and taken out that stitching, and I've cut these all to length. I've cut them about ½ centimetre longer than the bows because they tend to spring up a little bit, being box pleated. So just a centimetre or two longer than the length of each bow. Okay, I've now sewn these pieces of organza ribbon along the top and the bottom of each edge just by a few millimetres, and this is just to hold it in place so they don't move around when I put them on the sleeve. Now you can see it's still a bit, it's loose in the middle, so what I'm going to do is just pop a couple of stitches in the middle just to hold that to the back of the bow, so that holds that in place and makes it stay so it doesn't move around. I think it'll be alright, but it just seems a little bit loose for me, so that's what I'm going to do now. So sew across the tops and all your pieces a few millimetres in from the edge just to hold that top and bottom on every single piece for both sleeves, and then just catch stitch in the middle just to hold that down, stop it springing up. Next you need to take your sleeve and start pinning these on. Now I already got the halfway point at the top and we put a little mark there, and the same on the bottom. put a little halfway mark there so we know where to start. As we've already done a couple of trial runs of this, we know where to put them. And I decided I'd like them sort of meeting up with each other, not butting into each other excessively, but just meeting. So once you start in the middle, the rest should follow on. And obviously leave the ends bare because that's going under your underarm. So I've just been pinning these on in place and on the top edge of the sleeve. And now what I'm going to do is just take a different colour thread and start tacking these on one by one along the edge, just so it holds them and keeps them in place to the sleeve, so that when we come to sew the sleeve in to the armhole, these will be fixed in place. Otherwise they're just going to move around all over the place and the pins will make it very hard to sew under the machine. So that's the next process now. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so now all my strips are now tacked on to the bottom and the top on both sleeves. The next thing I'll do is fold that over and join that underarm seam together with the seam allowance I use of 1.5 centimetres. So I'm just going to run that down and do the same on the other sleeve.